What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Existential Stoic Podcast, episode 43, No
Woo!
Regrets.
No
how, to li-
regrets.
how to live your life with no regrets. I'm Randy.
Ooh.
I'm here with my buddy, Danny. How's it going, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
So, today we are taking a look at how to live a life with no regrets. Do you regret stuff in your life, Danny? I know I regret some stuff in my life.
I do, and I think I used to regret more than I do now. And I think it's always a tricky thing because I've been thinking about this a lot this week. That whole issue of a lot of us, I think it's common, right? We think about what could have been, maybe what should have been. We worry about the choices we make, about counterfactuals, but all of that keeps us in the past, and it justifies not doing things, or it gives us reasons for not changing, right? And I think it causes us to live in the past rather than recognize the potential and the possibility of the future. And I think that's a major issue, right? And the other side of that, I think that I was also thinking about is, it's easy to look back and regret things, but there's also the reality that who you are now is a culmination of all those things before. And I think, if you can find anything good in your life, and this is really Nietzsche talks about this in the Doctrine of Eternal Recurrence, right? If there's even one good thing in your life, that would be gone if you change something about your past, right? Because your life would not be the same. You would not be the same. And I think that's I think keeping that in mind always helps me, or reminding myself of that I have good things. So I wouldn't want to lose them or change them. And so you can't live that way, right?
That's a really good point that you bring up there, because we all kind of cherry pick the lives that we want. Like we think
Totally.
we think it's just this buffet or this candy store, and we can just pick what we want from here and pick. I want this money and this body and this relationship, and my family loves me this much and treat me this way. And it's just you can't cherry pick this stuff. So if you want one thing, you got to have all of it. But that's such a good point that you made there about what Nietzsche was saying, because that makes sense. Like anything that you have now, it came because of what you did previously. And
I mean, yeah, right. And it's and you said, you can't cherry pick because it's we've talked about that before, and being envious of Musk or somebody for their money. But it's would you accept the whole life? Because it's a whole person. It's not one thing. It's not just this it's not it'd be great to pluck things out like that and cherry pick, but we can't, right? It's all the other bullshit comes with it. And I think that's I think what a lot of us struggle with too, right? Is that, it's that sort of that struggle, or that, I don't know, tension between, right? Imagining, dreaming about what could have been, and it's a lot of times too, I think it's a really false mindset, because, you're looking back and you're asking yourself, oh, this could have been so different if my family were different, if my childhood were different, or whatever, if I didn't make that choice. But it's the fact is that that's looking back, knowing what you know now. And you made that choice at the time. So however you want to play it, right? It happened that way. If you go back, you also lack the insight. You lack the knowledge that you have now. So it's really it is a very I think it's a very false and I don't know. It's a weird self masochism and masturbation. You know what I mean? You're just looking back, dreaming these things about what could be.
It really is just fantasizing. I know I've been there, where you just get stuck, you get lost in this fantasy, because it's oh, if I could change that, then everything else would change, and then this would be so much better. And you just get lost in this fantasy, because it's they've done studies where they show that when you live something in your mind, your body goes through the same emotions, gets the same chemicals, everything, as if you were doing it in real life. So it really is just another form of masturbation.
It is, right? And it's funny too, because I noticed, I'll give you a perfect example. This was just recently this happened. And thankfully, I think I catch myself more now, but I think we all have done this. I was talking to a good friend from long ago. I don't want to mention any names or anything, but I was talking to a good friend, and he was just telling me something positive that happened to his brother, that his brother's doing very well in an area that he's in. He does art. Things are starting to work out for him, let's say, right? And I've known both of them for literally for over 20 years. So part of me was really happy for his brother, but there's always that part of you too that's motherfucker, oh man, Like if only, and that's I think sometimes too what kind of gets this negative fantasy going of like, oh, if only I had done X different when I was younger, if only this had worked out when I was younger. But it's like I immediately called myself. I was like, because it's stupid. I am happy for him. I'm not envious. That's not even my area, so I wouldn't even, I couldn't do that anyway if I wanted to. And then also, like, I'd lose everything else that I have now. It would all change. And I think we do really forget the significance of our choices. Like, we forget that we have chosen a path, right? And like, once you're on it, you can't, if switching something before would change everything. So, yeah, it's interesting though, because I think a lot of times, I don't know, at least for me, I think back when I was more depressed and stuff, I think a lot of times it was more a way to make myself feel better, to not to blame something else besides myself for the situation I was in. Like, oh, if only my parents had been better, or if only like this had happened, or if only I had made this choice then, this wouldn't be the case now. So really it's not my fault. Or conversely, like to justify it's okay that I'm not doing anything now because these problems happened and that's a justification for doing nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of that comes, I think, from this limited interpretation of the universe or of reality. Like there's only so much goodness to go around, as it as if,
Yeah.
But like a lot of problems come from that because people think like, oh, like, something good happened to me once, or, if he won, then I can't win. And it's like such a competitive mindset, but it doesn't, it's just like you go out and you look at nature and you see like, yeah, sure, there's some competition about trees trying to grow higher, but like it's just infinite. It's if it's not growing here, then it'll grow here, and if it doesn't grow here, then it'll grow here. So it's just like a different worldview.
Well, it's crazy too. Like I like that example too because it's like, there's been what, five mass extinctions. Every time that happens, nature comes back and it's different. I mean, fundamentally different. So it's like, I think that's what the perspective we lack is the possibility. And I think when the problem with regret or the problem with that negative, wishing or fantasizing when we look back is we really do block ourselves from seeing the possibility and potential before us. And we really block ourselves from seeing our capacity and our capabilities. Because really, like, like we said it so many times, but like, dude, we're both almost 40, but that means all like that's one way you could say that is, oh, I'm almost 40, my life's over, blah, blah, blah. Another way to look at that is, dude, I still have so much time ahead of me. I'm mature. I know myself way better. Now I can make, at the very least, now I can make choices that are right for me and that put me in the right direction and fuck everybody else and worrying about all that shit that I used to worry about, right? And I think it's like, but it's not always clear or easy to see it that way or to keep ourselves in that mindset, I think is what's difficult.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned in the beginning that you have less regrets now than when you were younger, and I kind of feel the same way. I think we're both getting to the point in our lives where we're becoming mature. I think that's how you
Mature.
pronounce it once you get to be a certain age,
Yeah,
mature.
yeah.
And so uh, I'm curious, how did it just happen spontaneously, or how did you seem to get less regrets now?
I think part of it was, I think, just like, I think honestly, I think part of it is like maturity. I think there is something to that, right? Just realizing that, I don't know. I don't know exactly when it happened because I wasn't never that concerned with what other people thought. But there was a point at which I hit when I just realized, like, who cares, right? This is my life. But the other side of it too, I think, was just like, also just like, I think I've been really working hard to make a lot of positive advancements in my life for the past 5 years. And I think like it's funny, but like, I think it's funny because like what if other people looked at my life and looked at what I went through, um, they might not seem like big achievements. But the funny thing is, even the very little ones matter a lot, I think, in really helping you leave that perspective and to look at it differently. And you see what you're capable of. You see that you can do the things that you wanted to do still, that it's not impossible. Because I think that I think one of the biggest things that used to hold me back before was that thinking like, well, oh, well, that person's so successful and they're 35 or they're 25 or whatever. And I'm already older than that person. So I can't possibly do that now. But that's just a false mindset. The truth is, I can do it. I just have to want to do it. And once you start really thinking that way and taking any type of positive action towards your goals, you start to see the reality. And I think that's what you need to break through and stop focusing on the past, stop worrying about what could have, should have, maybe been, and start focusing on what could be because you can make it happen, not looking for justifications and shit like that.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there, where first you need to recognize where you are and just like let it be. Because
Yeah.
half of living with regret is like there's this big elephant in the room and you're like, I hate you, you're not part of me, you're not in this room. And it's like, no, it's here. Like just
Yeah.
I think you said it so succinctly. Like the first part is dealing with that regret and just accepting it, because then you can move on. You can go somewhere else. You can do something else.
Oh, and
Like,
you know what you? Oh, sorry.
hmm,
You know, you just reminded me of too, because one of the things I think that really helped me too, and I was curious if it helped you too, was like the realization that like it dawned on me. I don't know when the hell this dawned on me, but like it was during when a time when I was very depressed. But I looked around and I realized like a lot of other people have gone through the same shit. Like I used to think like I used to have this view that my emotions, my experiences were so unique, and when I started to realize like, nah, it's not really that way. Like a lot of people struggle with this. Tons of people have midlife crises. Tons of people struggle with depression. Tons of people struggle with having made the wrong choices early on. And yes, not all of them make the right choices later, but you can. It's possible. It's like it's recognizing that possibility. I think that really helped as well. You know, but you're
hmm,
right. I think also first and foremost was just like recognizing the regret and dealing with it and accepting
hmm.
it happened.
Well, I mean, you're also recognizing the possibility, because like when you're living with that regret, that's like all consuming. You can't see the possibility. You can't see beyond it because you let that regret define you. And
Yeah.
then once you kind of accept that and be like, okay, here's where I am now, but it's not where I'm going to be in the future. Where else do I want to be? Then you can actually get somewhere, because then all of a sudden, like, then you're like, well, if I'm starting here and I want to end somewhere else there, where can I end? What's the realm of possibility? You know?
Yeah, you know what I like about that too? Because what's really crucial, I think, too, is like I think there's a shift between playing the blame game, looking for justifications for the situation that you're in now, and then the switch over to taking responsibility and realizing that you can still live a life that you want. And I think for me too, I mentioned earlier, but for me, one of the most important things too was like that idea of Nietzsche's and like recognizing that there were things in my life that I really loved, like that I really cherished, like our friendship, my fiance, like things in my life that I would not want them to be gone. And once you realize that, you realize all the other shit in your life can be fixed. Everything else can be fixed, can be made better, can be improved. You can make it what you want. But if you literally could change the past, you could potentially lose all those things you have now that you value, and you could be
That's
end
a
up in
good
just
point.
another shitty situation. You know, like it's like
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah, I remember one of my grandmothers, whenever like shitty stuff would happen, I would be like, why does this keep happening? She's always just like, because it makes life interesting. Like I think as she got older, she just got that perspective that like if this shitty stuff didn't happen, then life just wouldn't be that interesting. So it gives it some.
it's funny though, but it's like it is funny how often I think just age helps because you do get this different perspective of time. You get this different perspective of ability and because like when you're young and you're in college and stuff, it's like everything seems so hard because you have to learn all this stuff to get there. But then when you get older, you realize you already have most of the skills you need anyway. It's not you can always learn something new. You know what I mean? And it's just funny how like that shifts. It's weird.
Yeah, it's the perspective of age. I
Yeah.
think it's a blessing, and I think it's really difficult for young people, especially now because communication moves at the speed of light, and evidence of it is around forever. So like
Yeah.
you're fucked in both ways. But I was reminded when you were talking there, I was reminded of this comedy bit by Rob Schneider, how he was
Oh, I
saying
love Rob Schneider.
he was saying how when you're young, when you're like 18, you're like, if I don't fuck this girl, I'm gonna kill myself. And then when you're 40, you're like, if I don't fuck this girl, I'm gonna go get something to eat. You want soup?
Like whatever.
Yeah.
But you just, I think it is till you realize that, like, I think it's just being mature and realizing too that you have the power to make those changes and do what you want, and like you have the power to take responsibility. And I think a lot of it too is we all struggle with it. I think we all struggle with looking for ways to blame things, looking to our past for an explanation of now, rather than taking account of now and looking at what we can do to make the future what we want. And I think that's a
Yeah.
fundamental error we make, is like we always look back. It's like you go to it's like, I don't know if you remember when there was that period in time where like there was like a rash of like therapists convincing people that they had like trauma in their childhood and stuff, right? Because it's like most people want to, like, if I have anxiety and I have depression now and I'm unhappy now, I want an explanation. So if you can give me an explanation that, oh, this happened in my past, that's why this is the case now, great, now I have an explanation. But it's like, so the fuck what? Who cares? Yes, sometimes, don't get me, I don't want to diminish the fact of identifying problems in the past, obviously, and knowing them, but simply just looking to the past for a justification for now, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because
Mhm.
you're still in the situation now.
Yeah,
Like,
and it really, the past only defines you if you let it.
yeah.
So yeah, so like, I mean, point in case with regrets, one of the biggest regrets of my life was paying $250,000 to go to university. And
Right,
for
dude, totally. Fuck that.
and for a
What a
long
regret.
time, that was like the biggest regret of my life, and I let it define me. Like I had all these, I was angry with universities, I was angry with myself, I hated my career, all of this stuff because I got tricked into paying $250,000 for university. Like that was my story. And it was this huge regret. And then, like one day I was just like, enough's enough. Like I'm done with this. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, fine. I got here. This is the situation. Let's move on. And I just started moving to deal with that, to basically get rid of it. And then, once I started moving in that direction, and then instead of letting that experience define me as like, oh, I got, I'm $250,000 of debt, blah, blah, blah. As soon as I stopped dealing with that and dealing with, okay, let's overcome this, then it was no longer a regret. Then it was a little obstacle. And it
you know,
literally turned a mountain or, mountain into a molehill, you know?
Yeah, and you know what I love about that too is you said like your story, right? Like your narrative, the tale you told yourself about you, who you are, why you're you, why things are the way they are. But the funny thing about those narratives we tell ourselves is, like you said, right? You let that anger affect everything. You hated your job. You start really despising it, right? Because you see that connected to that fraudulent, $250,000 and stuff. You feel the
Oh,
weight of
yeah.
the debt. You can't move forward. But the fact is, you can. You're just so hyper focused on this narrative that narrative starts to define the present and the future, rather than just being a story about your overcoming it, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing we forget, is like when we look so much to the past, to regrets, to what could have been, for the story of our lives, we let it so much define it that it determines our future and it determines our now, rather than us being an active player. And it's crazy how it happens. We've talked about before, like, negativity is reinforced because we'll start interpreting the world that way. We see it everywhere. Like just like the small delights thing was so successful for both of us because it got us to focus, to shift our thinking and our awareness to positive things. And it's like it's our brains are very complicated, but in a way they're not. Like they're really simple too. It's like just like it's shifting your awareness. And I think we forget that too, that we have a story, but we can also write another story. And it's like you can be an active author, or you can have a book that's already present that has the tale written. You know what I mean? And I think that there's an important distinction there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of being an active part of your life. And there's this saying that I always look at that's like, where you are and where you were uh, pale in comparison to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you look at all of these successes in life, and they all had to overcome a lot in order to get there. And so it's just nobody, I mean, some people's lives may be relatively easier than other people's lives, but for the most part, everybody has to overcome some obstacles. And it's just like, you can let those obstacles define you, or you can just put on your big boy pants and get over them.
And do it, right? We know, you know what though, you're right. Like I think, yeah, it's absolutely true that, there is no doubt that some people will have it easier than others for a lot of reasons. And you can't diminish that. But that doesn't make it impossible for you. And I think that's where people make a mistake because we've all done it. I know you've done it, or I've done it, where you have this narrative of your life that has all these hardships that define you, but then you let them determine your future because you make it as if you can't do the things you really want. You say, "Oh, I can't do that because I didn't have an Ivy League education, or my parents weren't millionaires, or whatever." And it's like, well, you can. So there might be more obstacles in your way, but you can definitely overcome them. It doesn't mean they're insurmountable. You have to put yourself out there. But I think one of the difficulties is too is that when we're in that state of misery and regret, one of the dangers is that we get comfortable in it, and in a weird, sick, twisted way, we want to perpetuate it, right? And we don't
Yeah,
want things to change because if things changed, then that narrative we told ourselves would be false.
mm-hmm.
And so in order for it to be true, it has to keep affirming itself, right? And it's insane, but it's it's what happens.
Yeah, I mean that's true for so many reasons. Like our brains have to be consistent. Like once we, that's what I'm very careful about what I say because when you say it, you not only say it, but you also hear it back, and so and then your
Yeah.
brain wants to make it true. You want to be
Yeah.
consistent. So there's that, but then it's also uncomfortable because it's something new that you might have to deal with. And it's like a baby sitting in his own poopy diaper. It's like it's my it's my shit.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in shit, but it's mine, and I don't want to leave. So it's
Well, it's true. It's like how many times I mean, I know when I was depressed, you sit and watch like Netflix all day or something, right? And it's like, okay, so my situation's not changing, but I'm not doing anything also to change it. So really, and I had that realization one day. I was like, dude, this is on me. I got it. But I think people don't realize, I think too, especially when they're in that mindset and that have that attitude that they don't realize how these small little positive changes can add up and snowball so quickly into real life changes. Because I think we also, when we're telling ourselves that narrative and we have those regrets, we also get caught up in the thinking that if it doesn't change tomorrow immediately, it's never going to happen. And it's like, well, yeah, of course that's not going to fucking happen. It's like, and if it does, your odds are so astronomically impossible that it's definitely not going to happen. Like any change is going to take time and work and effort. And so we pretend like it's real hard to affirm our shitty situation, our security, our crappy diaper, right? But the truth is like all we have to do is take the diaper off and wash our ass and move forward,
yeah.
right? It's like
Put on
it's
some baby
possible.
powder. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Take it with the metaphor.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what you said there is very important. Is that most people see the mountain that they have to climb, and they don't realize that it's just a succession of steps. And one thing that when I was learning a little while ago, somebody told me drop by drop the bucket gets filled.
Yeah.
And so all the time, because I'm focused on learning a lot of stuff. All the time I'm confronted with this giant mountain in front of me, and it's overwhelming and it's too much. And then I just remind myself, drop by drop the bucket gets filled. And I'm like, okay, I don't have to do all of it today. Just today I have to put in 15 minutes, or I have to do this
Yeah.
one lesson, or I have to do this. The rest will take care of itself. And then also the days when I don't feel like doing it, I'm like,
Oh yeah.
okay, I cannot feel like doing it tomorrow, but for today, I'm just going to do it. And so
Yeah.
it's just and I can see that the progress is astounding because it's just continuous, repetitive, moving forward. And it doesn't have to be these big things. It's just these teeny little things, but they all add up because repetition is the mother of skill, or that's what they say.
Well, it's like, Aristotle said, habituation, it's through habituation we develop the disposition, the virtuous character states. And that's true for pretty much everything in life. If you do those sorts of things every day, you're the kind of person that does those things, right? If you do 10 minutes of programming a day, you're the kind of person that does computer programming. It will build up, it will add up, and eventually you will be at the state that, you'll be an expert level, right? It's
I
like,
mean, look
it's
at us. Look at us. We never thought we'd be podcasters, right?
no,
Huh.
but we just did it. And I think that's people forget. I think we imagine, because we focus on the mountain so much, we make starting impossible. And then, and I think that's like, it's almost like, it's funny, but it's almost like that negative attitude, the regretting. It's like a mindset. And when you're trapped in it, it seems impossible to get out of it. But the only way out is to take a step in a new direction. And once you do, you realize that everything is possible. But it's also, don't get me wrong, it is hard. Like, I struggled with this not long ago, where like I'm making all these positive changes. Things are going really well, and they're going better than ever, honestly. But I have days where I look at those goals that I want. I'm like, oh, it's so far away. Fuck. And like, I should just give up or quit, or it's not working out. And, I catch myself immediately though. I'm like, and I know I'm just like, dude, just take a break for an hour. Go do something else. Take a walk, come back, work on something else. Tomorrow, you're not going to think this way. And it always is the case that that's true, because I wake up and I'm like, why the hell did I even think that? It was more like I was just stressed out, or I pushed myself too hard or something. And I think, we forget that it's like, it's all baby steps. And like, literally, if somebody else can do it, you can do it too. You just got to build up the skill to do it. That's it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with recognition. Like, that's the first skill. Because we talk about how to live a life with no regrets. And really, the only way to do that is to recognize regrets as soon as possible, and then let them go. Like, that's the only way to do it. And because no matter what happens, like, you can't control all of life. And no matter what happens, you're going to wind up with these things that you probably would prefer went a different way.
And it's funny too. I think anybody dealing with this, the regrets, anxiety, depression, all this negativity that sort of surrounds us. I know when I was struggling with it the most, and it was really difficult. Like, I was really depressed, like really bad. I know, like, one of the things that really helped me too was like identifying the things that were most important to change. Like, I knew first and foremost, like, I needed to start taking positive actions in some direction that I wanted to go in. And I knew I had to work on my mindset, because my depression, my anxiety, I had to work on that. And that if I didn't get those things worked on, I wouldn't be able to really move forward at all. But then I quickly realized that getting those two things dealt with just meant dealing with other shit in my life that was causing the stress and anxiety. And when you make that connection, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait. Oh, all I got to do is make a phone call, talk to the loan company. All I got to do is start doing this stuff that I really want to do, talking to a friend, start a podcast or something, start writing this thing. All I got to do is start doing these things, setting time aside, and eventually I'll get to where I want to be. And as you do it, slowly but surely, you start knocking out those really stressful things one by one, and things just keep getting better. And it's like almost like you're like slowly pulling yourself over that wall, right? Like, and it can be overcome. I think we forget that, we act like these obstacles are insurmountable, that our suffering is like the most, like you said, like it defines you, right? It's a thing that like is your life story, and it doesn't have to be. You're choosing that to be your life story. And I think that's the other
because there's also the reward in letting it define you. Like, a lot of I realized this in my family, is that like whenever I would get sick, my mom would give me a lot of attention. Like, I recognized that early on. And for a while, I kind of liked it. I would because she would give me attention. I would stay home from school. I would get to watch extra TV and all this stuff. And it felt good. It was like rewarding. And that's the same way that a lot of stuff goes with these regrets, is like we let them define us, and then other people will sympathize with us and be like, oh, that's so terrible. But eventually you kind of have to cut the cord, because it limits you. Yeah, it limits you.
Oh, it limits you so much. And I think, and it's funny you mentioned it like that too, because I think, it's like, it's also like this attention that's not good either, and I think one of the funny things too is like, when you're in that mindset and you act like everything's impossible, when you really stop and think about it though, what's really the problem is you. It's like, and when I realized that too, because like I was, for a while I was blaming everything in the world but myself. And then when I really looked at it, I was like, but there are things I can do. I'm giving myself excuses not to do them. And once I realized that, like, I think I first realized that because I started journaling. I started return to journaling again. And I started working through these things and I realized like, wait, there is definitely things I can do. I'm giving myself excuses. And when you realize that, you suddenly realize like, this is bullshit. This is just something I'm telling myself. This isn't fucking real, like, because it's only real because I make it real, right? It's, you talked about this before, but it's the truth. Like, literally anything can be anything if you want it to be. It doesn't matter. You make it so. And I think but it's hard. It's really hard sometimes to get that epiphany or aha moment, or to get that, because also I think when you're in that mindset too, one of the difficult things is you want that immediate change. And unfortunately it takes work, because even when I had that recognition, it didn't stick. I had to keep fighting with it to get it to stick, because I had to keep affirming it and proving to myself that it was true before I finally accepted it as true. Because for too long, you have this other way of thinking, and that's the dominant explanation, and that's the problem. The way we function in the world is by creating explanations and meanings for things, and we have to wrestle with our own, BS all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what you said there is really important, is that like you have to kind of struggle with it and fight with it and kind of get over that the difficulty of actually doing it every day. Like I almost think you have to trick yourself somewhat. Like whenever I
Oh
start
yeah.
something new, and I'm always very hesitant about starting something new because I realize the commitment that it's going to take to actually stick to it. But like whenever I do start something new, when you're doing it and like the first couple days, you're doing it and you just want to do it more and more and more and
Yeah,
more and
it's the
more.
best.
Yeah. I always intentionally limit myself. I'm always like, I'm going to do as little as I possibly can, because I know that in order to make this part of who I am, I need to become the person who does this every day. So like I will make the bar of entry so low that like, it's 5 minutes. I have to do 5 minutes, but I have to do 5 minutes every day for 2 months, you know? And so that way it kind of gets over that hump, but it gets you to the point where you're the type of person who does this every day because you've been doing it every day for 2 months. And
I
then
like, yeah.
once you're that type of person, then you can start exploring more. But like I notice whenever I start something new, I intentionally have to tell myself, cut it off. Because otherwise I'll just go balls to the wall for 2 days and then I'll give up, because
I was
there it goes.
I was just gonna say I love that, because what that prevents is exactly that problem. Because I do the same thing. Like I'll get into something, like, yeah, this is cool as shit, and you go all in. You spend 6 hours for 2 days each day doing it, but then you immediately hit a plateau. You immediately have other obligations that you have to fulfill, other responsibilities, and you can't do 6 hours a day, so it falls apart. Whereas if
Mm-hmm.
you build it in a much smaller amount, it's super easy to meet. You keep doing it, and then suddenly you realize that, hey, I've already done this much, and it adds up so quickly that you're good to go. I mean, I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. So for instance, my biggest regret was the $250,000 of student loan debt. Okay.
Obviously.
And so how I broke that down, because $250,000, that's a big mountain,
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
and for a long time that defeated me. But then what I did was like, okay, just today I'm going to live financially like a winner. And what that meant was, today I'm going to make more money than I spend. And really, like, making money is just a big math problem where, if you have plus two minus one, plus two minus one, plus two minus one, plus two minus one, you do that enough times, eventually that's $250,000. So I was just like, okay, here's what I just need to do. Just today, I'm going to make more money than I spend. And I did that by budgeting, which was helpful, but like it just became part of who I am, and that allowed me to really take on that regret.
Yeah, no, I really like that too, because I think that's, and I think, what you said there too is important, because it's like what we've been talking about this whole time is you finally got to a point where you recognize the regret. You recognize the role it was playing in your life. You recognize the negative role it was playing, how it was defining you, and you realize you didn't want to do that anymore. And so you found a solution. And that's all it is finding a solution. But I think what you did that was crucial was you made the solution easy to manage. You didn't look at, I need 250 grand right now. Instead, you just did the more realistic thing, which is, I just need to start saving money. And I need to start having more money than I'm spending so that there's money in my bank account. And I can deal with things. And as soon as you recognize that, it's like you're off, right? You're out the gate, you're ready to go. And I think we forget this, man. It's like, it's so funny, but you see so many people like angry with their situation, blaming everything else. And it's like, yeah, okay, there are things to blame sometimes, but you also have to account for yourself. You also have to recognize that, dude, you have part of this is you, and you can change things. If you don't want to, I guess do that. But I think, once you start making those changes, you realize too that like even if you don't get to your goals, you'll at least have gotten as close as possible in the time you have, and that makes it worthwhile. Because that's the other thing I think that's important, is starting to realize that if you don't start now, you'll never start. And maybe I have regrets in my past, but I've dealt with them, and I'd rather not have any more in my future. So I know now that now I just need to go for it and take my chances and try, because if the worst comes to worst, at least I did it. Even if I fail, I don't give a shit. Really, who cares? I mean, really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that's, it's crucial.
Yeah, brilliant. So kind of to summarize how to live a life with no regrets. Recognize it.
Boom.
Plot a course for how to deal with it or where you want to go, and then baby step it.
Yeah. And I think with that too, right? It's like, I think recognizing that a crucial part of it is mindset and narrative. And because of its mindset and narrative, you have the power to make those changes, because that's you. Like it's 100% you. And I think that's, that's the biggest thing too, is just starting to talk to yourself differently, starting to treat yourself differently, not as a victim, but treating yourself as a winner, as somebody who can overcome things, as somebody with potential and possibility.
I really like what you said there, because it can be a shift that you can actually make today.
Yeah.
Like you can say like, oh, I did this and then blah 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 blah, or you can say, oh, I did this and then I overcame it and did this. So
Yeah.
and it really is just a narrative that you can actually change today. Like instead of saying,
dude.
oh my, yeah.
Oh no, I was gonna say, dude, at my worst, I remember I told myself like at my worst, and I was having difficulty like getting out of bed, and I told myself, I was like, today I'm gonna shower, which is such a stupid thing and such an easy thing to do. But like once I did that and made that positive change, it's like that got the ball rolling. And it can be that simple, because it's just this shift in thinking. And I know how hard it is to do. I really do. But once you make it, it's like it pays off so fast. It's amazing. And it is within your capability and ability to do it.
Yeah. And plus, like, you can just start speaking it before it actually happens. Like before I started paying off debt, I had to start speaking that I was paying off debt. I was literally speaking to the debt, saying, you're going away, like you're done. And but it's like it's changing that narrative, because before I just had this debt. I was carrying around this debt. I just had it. But after that, I was like, I may have incurred you, but I'm going to pay you off.
Well, I like what you're saying there too, though, because a lot of that difference too is before it was this thing that was imposed on you unfairly, and now you're recognizing it as something you own and you're going to deal with. And that is a huge shift in how you're thinking. And dude, I think like that's why I think journaling is really helpful too, because you can use it as a way to talk to yourself about what you want and about where you want to go. And I did that so much, and it helped. I mean, it paid off so much, because it really helped me start to think differently about all of it. And now, years later, I'm where I want to be, and I don't regret things. And I think that's like the important thing. It's also just seeing what you have in your life that's valuable. I think that's also important, is seeing even the little things in your life that you do value, because those are the things that would be changed if you did change your past. And I think understanding that is crucial too, to recognizing that, well, if I do value these things, then I need to do something now to make this all better. Because the other side of it too is just, why not take the chance? Why not improve things? Why not try to? I mean, the worst is the worst. What's the worst that happens? Things get a little bit better than they are, right?
Yeah. Seeing the value, like you just said, like recognizing, I've been very fortunate in what I've been able to do in my life, and a lot of that is because of the mistakes that I've made. So recognizing that value. Yeah, definitely.
It's
anything
crucial.
else you want to add to this episode today?
No, I think that's good. I think that was a good one.
Yeah, How to Live a Life Without Regrets, episode 43 of the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's my buddy Danny. Make sure you listen, follow, like, subscribe. Catch y'all later. Bye, Danny.
Later, Randy.